We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And I am so excited today because we are doing our official predictions for Fantastic Four First Steps, which by the time you're listening to this will come out in just a few days. So we are really in the crunch time. We are in the final stretch until we get to see Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, and Eben Moss-Bachrach take on these iconic roles. And I, as the person on this show who is most excited for this movie, could not be happier. So, because there's a lot to talk about and ever-present new footage, I'm going to turn it over to Katie so she can get us started on these predictions.
To start off, I just have to say, anybody who low-key questioned this casting, I do hope you're eating it a little bit, because any clip that has come out regarding the cast and or I shouldn't say the cast, the movie itself, it's so good. You could just tell there's really good connection between all of them. They have really good chemistry. And so I think that alone, just as we keep seeing clips come out, like, I really am more and more excited. I mean, I never really wasn't excited. This was very high up on my list too. I just was more excited for Thunderbolts because of the characters in that. But I just think as we see more and more things, it really is almost paying like homage to the actual stories of the comics in a way that I think a lot of the other movies are not able to. This is our first family, and we know that. And I feel like Marvel is going full, 10 toes down into this. And as we just keep seeing more things, I feel good. I think putting it kind of in, I think it's the 60s roughly.
Yeah.
When it's set, I think putting it in that time period was a very smart move. I just think in general, also like not doing another one of the origin stories is extremely nice. And also, again, lets us see this more established relationship among them all with also having powers. And I really like the aspect of them being such prominent heroes in their universe already. Like, I expect a lot out of this movie, I have to be honest, because of that alone. We're not seeing a new group come together. We're not seeing a new hero get their wings or whatever else they do. We're kind of being dropped down into the middle of the story. And I really like that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to your point that they are, starting them as these figures that are really on a pedestal. I think even it was the last clip really put that in. I mean, all of them have shown, the Fantastic Four, there's an in-universe comic that you can get that like exists in our world. There's action figures, all that. And that really set the scene. But then when you get to the last clip and, they're doing this press conference and they're asking, are we safe? Are you keeping us safe? You can see the level of trust that everybody truly has in the Fantastic Four and their ability to really be those guardians for this world. And to your point about kind of the time period, I mean, it's paying such homage to some of the really nostalgic elements of these characters in a way that, to your point, if you're setting them in the modern age, you're just not able to do that. And so to really set it apart from kind of the other iterations of these characters, to be able to give them a true foundation before they are then brought into the MCU, which I think we're all highly, highly anticipating, I think is so smart. And I'm so excited. I mean, y'all know I won't shut up about how much I love Pedro Pascal. So like this film, I'm like so excited. And I think with every new piece of footage and every trailer, it just continues to excite me more because I think it takes it in directions that I wasn't expecting. And every time I'm a little bit surprised, and I'm still not 100% sure exactly how the film is going to go, which I think is the right level of mystery to leave. Like, there's a little bit of a narrative starting to form, and obviously we'll get into that. But I think there's enough questions. I have enough questions still to be really excited for what's to come.
Yeah, let's get into some of that with the film itself because I want to kind of start high level, and that is this film takes place over a period of time. We're not getting dropped in, kind of like I said, and while we are literally getting dropped in the middle of their story, we're not getting dropped in a moment in time in which we see 3 days pass and the entire story is that movie. We know that there is going to be time passing because we see that Sue announces her pregnancy. We see Sue pregnant, and then we see baby Franklin in actually some of the more recent shots from the trailers. So that's 9 months, guys. That is a 9 month window because that baby's also not newborn when we see him. Like he's obviously been on the planet for a little bit. So that is kind of an interesting thing that I don't think we really thought about in earlier trailers because earlier trailers really only showed her announcing it and then being pregnant. We now see the baby. Like the baby is here. So I think that alone is going to be a really interesting aspect of the story itself because also when we know they are initially threatening, and by they, I should mainly just say Galactus, but obviously he has the Silver Surfer as kind of his herald. But when they are initially threatening Earth, she is pregnant. That storyline continues through the birth of Franklin.
Yeah, I think it's so smart and also interesting the way that they marked time literally through Sue's pregnancy.
Yeah.
To your point, like you can say this probably takes place over the course of a year. And I don't know that we've really done that over any other film.
I was just thinking the same thing.
We'll have a time jump, like obviously something like Wakanda Forever, you see what the horrible tragic events that I still am not over at the beginning, and then it's 1 year later you see the aftermath. Or a Spider-Man Homecoming, you see the man who will become the Vulture, not as the Vulture, pre-Vulture, and then you see him years later, well into his villainy, and they have a time jump. But I don't know that we've ever gone this long over a course of time throughout a film and really followed the character throughout that whole period. So I think that's really interesting, and I'm excited to see what that means for the team, but also their reception. Like we talked a lot about how they're perceived by the public. It's so favorable at the beginning. I would imagine, and we'll get into this clip because I think it's probably the most interesting of all of the trailers thus far. In the most recent clip as of this recording, the Fantastic Four basically was like, "Yeah, our son, we're not going to trade him for the world." Okay, I got it. But what is that going to do to their public perception over time? So I think that's going to be really something that I'm interested in watching too, is as time evolves, how does the way that they are viewed by the public change? And I'm excited to see all of the different things that can be shown over the course of a year instead of just saying, to your point, this took place over a week and now we're done. And then, you might get an end credit scene that takes place a year later.
Yeah, I actually am a little nervous about it, if I'm being honest, just because we haven't really, to my current knowledge and ability to remember, seen a movie really take place over this long of a period of time. And regardless of time jumps or not, I mean, a lot of movies have time jumps. A lot of the MCU movies have to have time jumps, but it's usually singular and it's usually because the one part of the movie is setting up the next part. In this case, while obviously the parts are setting each other up, to your point, the entire film is going to be taking place in that possibly about 1 year period. It's not going to be a distinctive this moment in time after the time jump. No, we're going to actually be seeing things. And so I do agree with kind of seeing how the sentiment about them changes. I do think that's going to change a lot because when I watched that clip, I was like, that's a hot take.
And he really just, like, went for it. Like, he was
But
fully
honestly, that
transparent.
was based off of knowing that to him, the world loves them.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, I mean, listen, guys, it's Reed Richards. It's not like he's not one of the literally smartest men and just people in general in the entire Marvel universe. But that is just genuinely going off the knowledge of we are loved by this world. So I would think they don't want us to sacrifice our child
Yeah.
and instead find another way. Do I think that's what's going to happen? No, I think the
No.
sentiment is greatly going to change. And I want to get into actually what I think is going to happen because I actually think it supports a theory I've had since Thunderbolts. But I do want to go back to the little bit I had mentioned about this means that the Galactus part of this story is at least maybe 2, 3, 4 months long
Yeah.
because we see the Silver Surfer come in and Sue is very clearly pregnant.
Yeah.
And then we see they're still discussing this when Sue is holding baby Franklin. So I think with that aspect, I'm now intrigued about like, so did Galactus kind of just say, hey, I'll hold on? Like, I'll wait. I'll wait for you to have the baby. I'll wait right here. Like, is that what's going on? Like, we obviously see they go up and negotiate. And that's where I guess he probably says, I want your son. Now, none of us should be surprised on why. That kid is powerful. We know that. So I guess is that going to be what we have to assume is why that happens? And does Galactus just hang out for 4 months and is like, I'll eat afterwards? Like, what is the whole like? How does that work exactly?
Yeah, I'm curious because the thing with Franklin is because he is so powerful. I wonder if there is like a prophecy about him either helping Galactus or being his doom. Like I don't like I'm not saying this is directly from the comics because I don't think I've read anything quite like that, but I do think that I could see Galactus as a character just based on the research that we've done really taking stock in some sort of like multiversal prophecy or something that basically says like, oh, this child is going to be your doom. That's like one way that this could happen, and he purposefully came to earth at this time in order to be around when Franklin enters the world. The other possibility here is like he came to devour, as he does, because he likes to eat. Cool, me too. And he happened upon the Fantastic Four with Sue being as heavily pregnant as she is. I would say she's probably in her final trimester based on, kind of the way that she looks, right? I think that's fair. She's in the kind of the back third of her pregnancy. I would imagine at that point, Franklin is already starting to emit his own power, right? So I wonder if Galactus was actually able to sense the level of power that is, or that Franklin possesses when he was still in the womb. And from that, when they go up to bargain, then that's when he decides this is what my price is for leaving your universe alone. Because I think the one thing that I thought was so interesting, because we know that Franklin and Galactus interact in the comics, we talked about that in our last episode, but Galactus has actually said that Franklin is basically like the number one mutant that is in existence. Because Franklin is a mutant. So that's a whole nother a whole nother can of
That's a headache
worms.
right there.
It is a whole can of worms. I mean, he might be this world's first mutant if you think about it, because his parents weren't born with their abilities. Obviously, they go up to space and get them, but because my understanding and my guess is that because Franklin was born with them, his genes are inherently different from birth, therefore making him a mutant. There are fascinating storylines with him, like going to Krakoa and like all that. So, like, I'm so excited for this character. He's gonna like open so many doors. But just knowing that Galactus in the comics holds him in such high regard, I think that makes it unsurprising, but I'm curious what drew him to Franklin, whether it was intentional or he happened upon him, because I think that could answer a lot of questions about like how this is going to go.
I honestly kind of think he happened upon him because the Silver Surfer still comes to Earth and we see her announcing to New York, this is your end. I'm here to tell you that. Hold on to your loved ones. Enjoy the last few moments you have here because he's coming and that's it. And so then knowing that they go up and they negotiate with him or try to negotiate, and the terms end up being about their son, I kind of feel like he low key happened upon them. Like he did not anticipate that he was going to find Franklin there. And so I think he did then find him and was like, actually, I find him a lot more valuable than eating your entire planet. So I'll let you save your people. I want him.
Counterpoint, he could just be playing 3D chess with them, and the threat of their entire world being annihilated to get them closer could be, you know, and it could just be too, like, he didn't know it was Franklin, if that makes sense. Like, it could be that he came to this earth because the energy signature of that person who could be his downfall, could be his ally,
Or
whatever.
it could just be a really good meal.
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking.
I mean, yes, fair. But, if we're going to say, because I do think it's an option that he is a little more intentional why he came to this particular earth, why this time, because otherwise it's extremely coincidental. Is like, okay, maybe he had her kind of explain that to explain the full gravity of the situation. And she did it so publicly, right? So she backed them into a corner because now they had to explain their decision to the world. So they're getting all of this pressure. I don't want to toss out the theory because I think it's interesting to think that like there are, especially because of who Franklin is, some like larger narratives here as to why this is happening and why now.
I mean, a few things. Quite frankly, he could be playing the 3D chess kind of thing. Either way, it's really a win-win. He either eats an entire planet, which he normally does, or he gets a very powerful baby. Like
Yeah.
I think for him, no matter what, he comes out on top. I do have to say though, prior to knowing about this clip, we didn't think twice about Galactus coming. Like how you kind of just made that point about like it does seem very random that well, that's the movie. That's the point of the movie. You know what I mean? So like
But again,
obviously
a lot of people have talked about like why Franklin, why now? Like none of the, and I
oh,
get it. Like,
Franklin. I just meant Galactus himself is coming. I
no,
mean,
no,
like
no.
before we knew it was Franklin related, he was coming no matter what. And we didn't think twice about that. We were like, yeah, Galactus is coming.
No, I think that makes sense because literally almost every other, I mean, I can't speak about the middle Fantastic Four because I haven't seen it, but if you
It's
think
not
about
worth
the
it.
original version, yeah, I've heard. But I think if you even think about the original version, that second film was setting up Galactus. He is one of their most iconic foes. That's not the part that I think is coincidental. It's the timing. It's the fact that they brought in Franklin at this point. None of the other iterations have brought in Franklin. And so many people have been talking about like, hey, this is our first go around with this set of Fantastic Four. And already you are bringing in the absolute MVP of power in Franklin. That's like a big swing to take really early on. And then when you bring in this clip, you're like, oh, like, I wonder if this is less of a coincidence because of Franklin. That was really where that was coming from for me.
Yeah. I think either way, I think this all leads into the theory I low key had before, which I know you didn't like.
It's not that I didn't like it, I just wanted to propose
No, I'm
alternatives.
sorry. It's not that you didn't like it. You just had any other option above mine.
No.
But I think we've been talking a lot since the Thunderbolts about the reasoning why the Fantastic Four would theoretically be coming to 616. Now, obviously, there are still theories that they're not even on that ship and that it could be Doom and all that. And those still exist, and I'm not putting them out the window. However, we are getting a Fantastic Four movie in like a week, and therefore we do need to kind of say, what are our options coming out of this movie? I think from the jump, the one that I've kind of really latched my wagon onto has been I don't think they are winning against Galactus. And now I actually think with the bomb of him wanting their son, I actually genuinely think that Loki confirms it. I think, and actually, you brought it up, I believe, maybe last week when we were talking about Galactus, but you were like, why would they leave their planet? Like, why would they not? And well, they might not realize they're leaving their universe, but, or they do.
I think they do.
In this
If
case, I think this gains more merit that they do, in fact, know they're leaving their entire universe.
because if you I know everybody's talking about this, but if you look at Reed's calculations, he is specifically doing multiversal transportation calculations.
Yes. I just know that we had mentioned that, like, we didn't know if maybe because of incursions, they accidentally had, flown right through and ended up in 616. But I do think it actually does confirm that they were intentionally trying to leave their universe, because leaving their planet wouldn't do anything. Galactus would just come back for him somewhere else. So I actually truly think that the only way to both keep the people safe and also keep their son safe would be to try and leave.
I hear you. I think where I'm getting stuck though is like he basically was like, "Give me your son or I eat the planet." I don't think that removing Franklin from the universe altogether is going to make Galactus spare the planet. And I really have a tough time imagining a Fantastic Four team that is okay with condemning their entire planet to
I
death.
mean, I hear that, but we just watched a clip where he straight up said the price was too high and they wanted our son, and they literally said, "Our son over y'all."
Yes, but then the back half of that was, "But we will find another way." They weren't abandoning the planet.
And maybe somewhere in there that is the other way. And maybe they figure out a way to talk to him, or they try to trick him or something of that nature that allows them to try and save their planet while removing their son from the factor. Either way, I think this is the reason they end up leaving. Like, I think we are seeing directly how they are coming to 616. They're coming to 616 because they are essentially fleeing their home universe, trying to save their son. Whatever happens to the people, that is still to be determined. But I think that clip alone also shows that is where the people turn on them. I don't expect the people to sit there and say, "Oh, that's cool." No, I expect them to be like, "Hey, I get it, but it's a baby." Versus the fact that this is our entire planet that you're gonna just let this guy come and eat because you're not willing to give up your son. That's not cool. You said you'd protect us. So I do think there'll be a lot of animosity there. And while I assume they will probably try, I do also know they're definitely fleeing, or it's only Franklin and maybe Sue on that ship, and not everybody's on that ship.
Okay, I'm processing the last part because I think there's an interesting nugget there.
Yeah, maybe it's not all of them. And so, we're out here. Reed found a way to do it, sent Sue and his son away, and I don't know, maybe Johnny came with, we don't know, but not the entire team is necessarily on that ship, and they stay back to try and figure out how to handle Galactus.
That could be interesting. And then, they're able to sue, really, because if we're just assuming it's Sue and the bebe, then obviously the bebe is not having conversations, but Sue can then potentially get help
Right.
from another universe, aka 616.
Well, we talked last week about Galactus, how we think Galactus should make it out of this movie.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about the fact that maybe we end up having the movie end with Sue, or not inherently end, but towards the end, Sue and the baby flee. That's the ship we ended up seeing. And the rest of them stay to try and buy more time and figure out a way to get around Galactus. When we start having our fun little incursions and we head into Doomsday, that could bring Galactus on board because he's not defeated.
Yeah. Here's where I'm getting stuck. And it's not specific to this theory, it's just like in general as it relates to this film. And like sometimes we have this answer and sometimes we don't. And I always hate when we don't because I think it makes it harder. We don't have any idea what Doomsday is about.
No.
Like, truly, like, we don't have the barest hint of a synopsis. We've got
Correct.
half a cast and we've got a release date. It would be much nicer to understand. We don't even need to understand necessarily what universe this is taking place in.
Although we do, it's 828.
No, I'm not. No, no, no. I know. Not the Fantastic Four. I'm talking, sorry, Doomsday.
Fantastic Four is in Universe 828, though, just so everybody knows.
Yes, 828 after Jack Kirby's birthday. That was the inspiration for that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if we had any direction for Doomsday, it would be easier to say, like, this is how it sets that up. Whereas, like, I'm struggling because my brain immediately wants to say, okay, but like they're on a ship, they're doing multiversal travel. That could almost be a really interesting backdoor to Secret Wars because of what happens at the beginning where the incursions have basically ended and you have the last two universes that are incurring and then you go into Battle World and all that good stuff. That almost seems clear. And then I remember, okay, there's an entire film that is happening that we don't know what is going on. I would think, based on who they've included in the cast, that it's taking place on 616. So that to me says that at some point, all of the Fantastic Four have to make it to this Earth, have to make it to 616 from 828. So while I like the idea of maybe of maybe Reed sending Franklin and Sue ahead in order to get away from Galactus, do they have a second ship that's going to bring the rest of the team?
Well, I guess that's where I'm saying like 828 is a part of the incursions, in which case they end up maybe we don't see them in Doomsday, but then we end up seeing them in Battle World. Or I'm sorry, Wars, but Battle World.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because oh, that ooh. Ooh. I just thinking through Secret Wars a little bit. That would be interesting because as you may or may not know, if you haven't read the comics or listened to our episode about Secret Wars that's now a few years old, but I would think still applicable because it was all about the comic itself. So check that one out.
Yeah.
But basically, when Doom becomes God Doom, he's like, lol, I'm gonna have whatever I want now. And he takes Reed's entire family.
Yeah.
Sue becomes his wife, Franklin and Valeria both become his children. The wrinkle there is if we're saying he sends Sue and Franklin ahead, even if you do a time jump, who's Valeria's daddy?
I mean, in that case, maybe they put that little bit on pause. I don't know how we're bringing a whole second baby in here.
Yeah, I mean, there is, I think it's like an 8-year time jump
Yeah.
between the first scene, like the first, there's like it's like obviously a series of comics. Secret Wars is like, you get the one book, but it's like multiple issues. And after I believe it's the first issue, which is when the final incursion happens and everybody lands on Battle World, there's like an 8-year time jump.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, because like that's how you get Franklin aged up easily. It's how you get young T'Challa aged up a little bit there, which is great. But for Valeria, it's like she would already have to be pregnant with Valeria, which is not impossible. Because then Valeria would be, I mean, she'd only be 8, but at least, unless there's some time between this film, Doomsday, and then Secret Wars, she could almost be 10 or 11, depending on timing. I don't know. I'm just, again, like, I'm really stuck on the fact that, like, we know what Secret Wars is. It's so clear. But then, like, Doomsday is this, like, weird wrinkle in the middle that maybe doesn't even need to happen, question mark?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to say in that case. I'm just going off of what I know right now, and that is that the Fantastic Four ship is in 616. And so we have to some degree, hopefully, find out in this movie who's on it.
Yeah.
And I would think that would be the culminating point of this last, or this, well, yeah, this last possible movie before Doomsday, because Spider Man is still up in air about whether it will be coming out before or in between.
And even if it's in between, it might be totally ground level and completely unrelated.
Yes, exactly. So I think if we're going to expect any film to lead more into the events, it's going to be this one. I do think what they'll be giving us the answer on who's on that ship in this movie. I think it'd be weird not to. I think in their own way, that's what letting us think about it for 2 months was going to do, because it's going to be a topic of conversation until now we get the answer. I do think now with Galactus and his involvement with Franklin, I do think that adds that last layer of depth to understand a little bit why they are not necessarily on their planet. Whether it is just Sue and the baby, whether it ends up being all of them. I mean, maybe Galactus gets annoyed and eventually is just like, screw you, I'm going to eat the planet and you guys and your son. And they're like, no. And in the moment of needing to try and save their son and their family, they flee. I mean, listen, not all heroes make the right choices all the time. And if the world's ending, maybe they really were like, here's the cost analysis of what this is going to be. We can either stay here and die with our planet, or we could try and live. We're astronauts. Like, we kind of can leave. We also have special powers. So maybe it comes down to that. I don't know.
Well, the other thing that could be interesting, if you want it, because here's where I'm also getting stuck. And look, the reason that we keep focusing on the big picture with this film is exactly what Katie just said. This has got to be it. Like, we are heading into two massive crossover films with almost no foundation laid. They've uttered the word incursion once. Some people have moved around universes like 4 times, and Loki's out here making a branch tree because he is now like the god of stories. That is essentially it. And Wanda went a little nuts for one movie. Like, that is all they've done. That's it, right? And I think where I'm trying to understand is like how can we start to pull some of these it's not just like let's get us ready for Doomsday, let's get us ready for Secret Wars. It's where can we pull in some of these other elements? So, you mentioned the concept of an incursion. I actually think it could be interesting if like Reed in doing his math and his multiversal travel actually tries to send Galactus into another universe, but it backfires and creates an incursion. Because I think what we don't understand about incursions is what causes them, because we have gotten the tidbit that we know Doctor Strange caused one, but he did a lot of weird stuff in MOM. Like,
Yeah.
at what point did he cross the line into I'm going to create an incursion with this particular action? I'm not sure. Also, like, was it his actions in particular, or was it like all of the stuff he was involved in with Wanda created the incursion? Because that opens up a whole world of possibilities of what exactly causes an entire universe to bump into another. Then we have the weird Loki stuff that, like, I still don't understand how that all wraps in. But I say all that to say, if we know that Doctor Strange can create an incursion with magic, I would imagine that Reed could do it then with science and his kind of superpower beyond just the stretching. So if Reed tries to send Galactus away and does something where he messes with the balance of the universe or the multiverse, I could see him actually creating an incursion where his entire universe is pretty much obliterated because of what he's done. The other option is that Doctor Strange and him are two essentially kind of mad scientists who create both halves of the problem that come together.
I also want to add to that because this is something I had written down when I was watching the trailers and all the clips and everything else that have come out. He straight up says he brought him here,
Yeah.
talking about Galactus. And I had that written down because I know we kind of touched on, and this will circle back, I promise, but I know we kind of touched on like maybe it was Franklin and his power and everything else that he emanates. And that's kind of why I said, I don't know if it's so much of that or if it was low key that Galactus just like stumbled upon Earth and was like, "Cool, another new planet for me to eat." Because I do think because that specifically was what was in my head when he was saying, I brought him here. And now that could be a red herring in the trailer for us to kind of go off rail and think otherwise, but I do have to think we have to deeply consider that he, just like Doctor Strange as you were kind of comparing them, was messing around on the scientific side of space and time and everything else. And in doing so, he did manage to maybe put a bigger beacon on Earth than intended, and Galactus came for that reason. On the other end of that, now he continues to do the work to try and get them out of the situation, in which case he's only creating a bigger problem. Because I also think, from a scientific side of it, because we've seen it on the magic side, we know that a lot of what Doctor Strange was doing was just so screwed up and messing with universes. That was what was creating tears. You're just completely changing like essentially the coding of these universes when they were there. I mean, Wanda literally killed the entire Illuminati and they were just going to pretend like that was supposed to happen in that universe. Like, no, that was not supposed to happen. And then also, obviously, they were really like, especially Doctor Strange was really meddling with dark magic. Wanda kind of low key birth, right? But like Doctor Strange was really meddling with all sorts of dark magic. I mean, he literally used a deceased version of himself and dreamwalked. Like
Yeah.
crazy kind of things were happening. In which case, he was breaking down the fabric between these universes and doing that. On the scientific side, I don't know if it's as clear what the repercussions of some of it is until it starts to happen. They knew magic. I mean, magic on its own is already like, hey, this is a little abnormal. We're already doing things that are not what we know of typically. Science, different. And so I do think maybe he was messing around at the beginning. Maybe he did bring Galactus and put that beacon on Earth and whatever. And in doing everything he was to try and fix it and get them out of there, he was only creating a bigger problem.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that because I think too the thing about Reed is like he's so smart, but like I don't know that he always.
He's like Tony, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say temperament wise
No.
for sure, but
Yeah.
I would say these guys are so smart sometimes that the want of discovery. I mean, look at Age of Ultron, it's the perfect example.
Mhm.
The want of discovery and the possibilities of what they can do because they have the minds to do it supersedes sometimes the question of, should I be doing this?
Yeah.
And so I think there's a very strong possibility of that. I also think you don't necessarily always just have, yes, obviously, as we said earlier, for the plot device Galactus, he is their foe, obviously, all this stuff. But I would think a good plot typically has a reason the villain shows up, you know? And so we did throw out that theory. It could have been Franklin. It could also just as easily been Reed messing around with things he doesn't fully understand, but he's trying to understand. But in doing so, he just said, "Hey, buddy, you want to come to this planet?" And then here we are.
I mean, the option too is on the table that Galactus isn't even from this universe.
Okay, I didn't really want to get there because we brought that up last week and we could not confirm nor deny if he is technically one of a kind.
But even if he isn't, this Galactus could have been brought over by Reed opening gateways between the universes. That's all I'm trying to say. Is like regardless of whether or not he's a Nexus being, that could be what Reed did was tear a hole in the fabric between a universe and allow Galactus in.
Fair. That's a fair point. Yeah. I think that too would add merit to the I brought him here
Yeah.
if they realize he's not even supposed to have been in the universe.
Yeah.
Although, here's a question then. I wonder, let's just run with this. We're going to run far, far, and far with this.
Far afield. Oh no.
Yeah, we're going to go everywhere.
Oh
We're going to go
no.
around the world on this one. Just bear with me. What if the Galactus in this movie is supposed to be 616's universe's Galactus? Let's say there is still only one. Let's just whatever, theoretically. What if they're trying to bring him back? You said they're trying to, like, what if he's trying to use the universe to do whatever they got to do? What if they're low key trying to bring him back to 616 and, for better or for worse, are using their own son to have to bait him to get him, one, off the planet, two, out of their universe, and three, hopefully drop back off where he's supposed to be so that they can just move on. But in the meantime, they get stuck in 616 because of the incursions.
Man, that's a choice to condemn an entire other universe. I'm not saying it's not possible, but that is quite the choice to make.
I mean, yes, but I guess my thought process is if they low-key figure out that he's not supposed to be from their universe and that Reed did in fact accidentally bring him over, it might just as easily for them been able to be figured out that this is the universe he's supposed to be. I don't see it necessarily condemning the universe if he was already in there and he probably would have eventually ate them anyway. You know what I mean? Like if he was already existing in that universe, he was already eating planets. Like they're just putting him back where he belongs.
I mean, yeah, that's a justification for this choice.
Well, I mean, what else would they would do? I mean, especially if Reed is looking at the mistake of I just condemned our entire planet, universe, and our sun because I accidentally brought this dude here when he was supposed to be eating somebody else's planet, not mine. Like, you know what I
I
mean?
hear
Though
ya.
that's
No, I
that guilt
do.
almost of like I just condemned all these people when he should never have been here.
I hear you. I mean, it's a possibility. I'm yeah, I'm processing, but I think it has merit. It's very valid. It's very possible. I'm curious then, like, if we do get Galactus on 616, what that means for like a doomsday. I'm just going to keep bringing it back to like, how does this help? Because we know that the ramifications of this film have to be so much bigger. And if they're not, then I literally don't know what the heck Marvel is doing.
Well, but I think quite frankly, because I don't understand what's happening in Doomsday, I'm almost like I don't care. Because I don't know the plot. If we were going into Secret Wars, I would have been like, here's how I think this is happening, and here's how I think this is happening. And I would feel like I have a lot more to go off of. I don't know what Doomsday is about at all. As you also have pointed out, this could be our last movie or our last more prevalent movie before Doomsday happens. And so a part of me is like, because I have zero knowledge of this, I'm like, I don't want to keep shooting in the dark to be like, well, it has to lead into. Yeah, it does, but I don't know what it's leading into. I have no clue. I have no knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I guess I'm just trying to like understand how could that happen? Right? Like based on what and I know we're working on obviously extremely incomplete information because the clips are probably slightly misleading, and we've probably only seen 1% of the movie because they just keep recycling the same clips. So it's really hard, but I'm just trying to like map out like how can this, if we're going to put out a theory, how does that then play out further down the road? And, how do we bring in Doctor Doom? Is he already a 616 Doctor Doom? If so, like where's our Fantastic Four? And it's interesting because the whole reason they set this, like the director has come out and said, like the whole reason we set this in a different universe is because he didn't want to deal with the questions of like, where was the Fantastic Four when Thanos was around? So we don't have a Fantastic Four on 616 that
Right.
is like from 616. And that is a specific, that is for a reason. So then Doom can't be from 616, right? Because you're not going to have a Doctor Doom that doesn't have a Fantastic Four. That would be weird. So then how does he factor into all of this, especially knowing that the next film is really about him? I mean, he is the title character. So that's where I'm like, okay, we can have all these theories and that's great, but like, how do we get from the end of this film to set us up? Because by the end of this film, my goal is that I have a clear understanding of what the heck Doomsday is about and what are we seeing there. Because otherwise, like, there's still a huge. It can do all the work in the world around bringing the Fantastic Four into 616, but if it doesn't help the larger like narrative and really close that gap, I'm really going to struggle.
Yeah, I guess I'm just at a point where like I don't know enough about Doomsday, and I mean us as a fan base don't know enough about it, that I'm like I just need to focus on what I do know, and what I do know right now is what I've seen of the Fantastic Four trailers, and that is controlling what I can control because I don't know about Doomsday. I'd assume he's not. I mean, as you already said, he's not 616's. I'd assume he's coming in on another incursion. Like, I'm going to think that throughout all of Doomsday, we are going to just have people showing up left and right in places they're not supposed to be because we are actively having universes collide. And then Battle World is going to kind of be when the dust settles a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I really wish we had at least a synopsis. Like that would be so wildly helpful.
Yeah, but it's kind of nice we don't know it. Like I don't know what to expect here, and so for me it allows me to just kind of be like whatever. Like anything else I would have been like no way, but I genuinely, and that also I think opens the door for Fantastic Four to really show and possibly point us in the right direction. And that's what I hope it will do, but like I don't know. Like I don't know enough about Doomsday to even have the conversation of how do we think I'm going to lead this in. That's how I think. I think there's going to be a lot more incursions happening on the other end because we're going to have Reed trying to save his universe, and possibly he was the one who initially condemned them to begin with because he was messing around with the multiversal science and everything else. So that's how I think it's going to happen. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I don't have anything to say to that cuz I don't have any answers. There's one other thing I just want to hit on really really quickly before we go into mid credit and end credit predictions, which is there has been a lot of talk around kind of the other villains in this movie. So it is either rumored or confirmed that we're going to have Mole Man, who we actually know is Paul Walter Hauser's character. So I believe he is in I, Tanya. So if you recognize his face, that might be where you know him from. He's been in a few other things, but that's where I know him from. They're also going to potentially reference Puppet Master, Mad Thinker, Diablo, Red Ghost, and Wizard. And I think a lot of these are going to, my prediction is that a lot of these are going to come kind of at the beginning of the film prior to Galactus coming in, basically to kind of establish them as like this world's heroes. It's going to really show who they are. This is their, perception to the public so that when that turns, we get a full view of how drastic that change is.
Yeah, I agree. I also think you have to kind of give them their footing a little bit because we aren't seeing their origin. And so while you are dropping us in within their story, I expect to see them fighting other villains that are kind of their more day-to-day villains rather than a Galactus, because I do think that's kind of a lot, especially if you think about we're a little obnoxious because we are Marvel fans through and through. So for us it's like yes, I've seen the originals. Taylor hasn't, but yes, I've seen the horrible like 2015 remake. Like we've been there, we've done that, and obviously there are plenty of fans who also have read the comic books back and forth. So we're going into this with the origin already very well known. I do think from the perspective of somebody who maybe doesn't know the story as well or is just coming to go see a good movie because their friends are telling them to go see it with them, like I do think you have to kind of set a little bit of a story up because those people are not going like this can't be insular to the MCU. It still needs to be able to be a set alone movie that if somebody just watches it, they're like, "Oh, I get it." So I do think a lot of those other villains are probably going to have to be setting the scene for that kind of thing
Yeah.
and just showing who the Fantastic Four is on the day to day, why their entire planet loves them, why they are seen the way they are, because we're not going to see the origins and we're not going to see Doctor Doom and we're not going to see all these pretty pivotal beginning stories that we kind of have seen before or know of from the comics.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Mid and end credit scenes. I don't think we've gotten confirmation yet of how many we have. Typically by
I
now
haven't
we
seen it.
Yeah, typically by now I think we have it. Like normally we know and somebody has kind of leaked, if not the actual scene itself, the number of scenes. So we're going to go on the assumption of 2. That way we have more chances to be right if there's only one. So, your turn. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, I actually kind of have a weird gut feeling there will be one. And I actually think the gut feeling that I also have that there will be one is telling me that it's maybe not MOM style esque, but almost in the same idea of low key dropping a high level trailer of Doomsday.
That's what I was going to say. A teaser.
Yeah, I think as you very clearly highlighted, we don't know almost anything about Doomsday. And I do think whatever happens at the end of this movie connects something. It either is going to connect to Doomsday or it's going to connect at least to the end of Thunderbolts, and we're at least going to know something there. But I kind of see them prioritizing just dropping us into the Doomsday kind of vibe because, quite frankly, again, we aren't 100% sure we're still going to get Spider Man beforehand. And even if we do, I mean, maybe we'll see if Spider Man fits into the Doomsday story, but I don't expect an end credit there to necessarily fully lead that up because it's just not the movie, I think, to do it. And the way that they do end credits nowadays, it's not the same as how they used to. The end credits used to be sometimes so random and like about a movie 5 movies away and it pays out and you're like, "Holy crap, like I totally forgot that even happened."
And now it only pays out 50% of the time anyway.
Yeah, they're relatively inconsistent now anyway, and a lot of the times there have been exceptions. I don't want to say that there aren't, but a lot of the times end credits either just float out there and we're still waiting for a lot of them to pay off, or they already did, like they pay out on the next thing. So I would think they low key might do that because I don't know what else they would do. And I think we don't know enough about Doomsday. And they've also started filming. Like we know the Thunderbolts end credit scene was filmed on the set of Doomsday. Like we know that happened. So I wouldn't inherently be shocked to know that it happened again for Fantastic Four. I mean, we have set pictures already of members of the Fantastic Four on the Doomsday set. So like I'm going to assume they're going to wrap that in that way.
Yeah. Also, you have Chris Evans out here saying that Pedro Pascal couldn't do some of his press for The Materialist because he was filming for Doomsday. So,
Right.
like, thanks, Chris. We love you. Yeah, I do think that is immediately where my gut went of like what makes the most sense because there is so much gap that needs to be filled. I think the only other thing if they don't go like full trailer is that like we see the origin of Doom a little bit in that film of like okay, we know Doom is from a different universe. How does he get here? How does he come to 616? Because I think my gut says Doomsday is taking place regardless of we know we're going to get to Battle World later, which we can consider neutral in the sense that like there's so many pieces of different universes that are coming together. But I think Doomsday is going to really primarily take place on 616 to start. I don't know that it's fully going to take place on 616, but I think Doom is at some point going to come to our home universe. That said, I do wonder if instead of a trailer or on top or before a trailer, even if you want to say they're going to do 2, I kind of am inclined to agree that it's just going to be the one. But if we want to go for argument's sake, maybe it's him coming to 616 or going after the 828 Fantastic Four, following them for whatever reason. And then we get the full trailer after as kind of like a 1-2 punch of like setting it up, this is Doom's here now, and then we get a little bit of a taste of what is actually going to be in the film.
Yeah, I think either way it has to be Doomsday related. And I really do have that like gut feeling. And probably tomorrow, right after we record this, they're gonna be like, there's 2 end credit scenes confirmed. But I do have that gut feeling there won't be. I mean, I don't remember. I think it was probably Thor Ragnarok. I'm pretty sure it might, if it had to, the second one had nothing to do with Infinity War. But one did. And I by nothing, I mean I'm pretty sure this if it had a second one, I feel like it was Korg.
Yeah, wasn't him like coming back to life? Or Meek. Maybe it was Meek.
Yeah,
We
or like
thought Meek was
yeah,
dead.
yeah. But my point just being is because we can't rely on Spider-Man being the last movie before Doomsday, we have to assume this is the last movie before Doomsday. Therefore, hey, we kind of need it to introduce the next big thing that's coming, which is that movie.
I agree. And the last thing I'm going to say is I think it's so wild that we're going to go into Doomsday next year with absolutely no setup. Like, it's just, we're going absolutely, completely blind. Like, I know we're going to get trailers, but
I'm going to say a really hot take,
okay.
and it's going to be really nice to say it at the end of the podcast. But like low key, I'm kind of really ready for Doomsday and Secret Wars to be over so we can enter the mutant era.
If I wasn't so excited, because truly, like, I loved reading the Secret Wars comics, so I'm really excited to see how they do that. And also, I will die on this hill, but if Miles Morales does not come during Secret Wars, so help me. I will actually have a total meltdown. But yeah, I think they have bungled this whole saga so much that there is a part of me that's like, all right, you learned your lesson, folks.
Well, you know what it
Plan.
feels like? It feels like season 2 of What If, where you're like, oh, cool, we're having a good time with just a bunch of random movies. And it's like, all good and dandy. I don't actually really need them to connect. They did that in season 1, but I don't really need them to do that. Oh, there's a little bit of overlap. Cool. And then they randomly were like, no, actually, we really do want to have the same thing as season 1 and just have everything culminate at the end. And like,
Let's
that's
just
what it feels
force
like.
it all in, even though none of it led up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It feels completely antithetical to what we're used to. And if I could make a suggestion, Marvel, please go back to the intentional phased evolutionary approach that you had in the original, which is so funny to say because now James Gunn has basically come out during the Superman press tour and been like, oh yeah, the Infinity Stones, they weren't going to do those from the beginning. I wrote that in 2 minutes. Absolutely, completely reset my entire perspective on that saga.
I don't know though, because enough of those early movies before Guardians started with the stones already. So I don't feel like that's inherently true.
All I'm going to say is that's what he said in an interview.
Yeah, but we have the Tesseract already in Cap.
But that wasn't inherently a stone.
Yeah, but I don't know. And Thor already had the ether and all this other stuff. Like I don't feel like that's. And then Avengers, we had 2 stones in that. These are all before Guardians.
All I'm going to say is that's what James Gunn is claiming on the Superman press tour.
Okay. Yeah, okay, James. Okay.
Anyway, all that aside, intentionality, please, because this schlop isn't working. It's just not working for me, personally.
Yeah.
Anyway, no matter how I feel about the saga overall, I am so excited for Fantastic Four. Almost 2 hours, just about 2 hours of Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards. It's going to be incredible. And I am so excited. We will be back next week with our full reactions. And then after that, we'll figure it out. But please make sure that you're following and subscribing on your podcast platform of choice. The website's linked below. You can check that out for any questions that you may have about the show. There's a lot of good stuff on there. And if you want to support our podcast, you can do that through our Buy Me a Coffee link, which is also linked in the show notes.
You guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials, which are linked in the show notes as well. And as T mentioned, next week we will be doing our reactions to the movie, our high-level reactions, as I'm sure there will be plenty to kind of break down afterwards. So make sure you guys are keeping an eye out for that. And also make sure you guys are getting your tickets for Fantastic Four because this feels like one you're not going to want to miss, especially on opening weekend. So definitely go get your tickets. We're excited. We can't wait. And until next week, Marvel just blew your mind, so let's talk about it.